So I was asked certain questions. I had included a poll and there were certain email-based questions, and I'm going to address them now. One question, it was asked about 3 times, was industry analysis. How important is industry analysis? What about real life examples? What do we do with them? So I'm going to give you a response for that. Here I have a extract from the examiner guide. No matter how tempting it is, do not waste time in providing irrelevant material that does not answer the question. The danger is that candidates often feel obliged to offer real-world examples that do not relate to the task. Irrelevant points will simply waste time even if they demonstrate prior reading. This is not a test of whether you have done the industry analysis. This is the strategic case study. It's not a bachelor's degree or master's thesis to understand whether you've done a literature review or whether you've done your reading properly. That comes later. There are so many things. Now, even in the initial writing lessons I provided, I very specifically made sure that there was no demand or mandate for you to include real life references, because that would come last. That is one of the last things. Read the business press and familiarize yourself with the industry. I am going to provide you with some links. I will share it. The links are of course ready. I can share it. So these links, just a few links from video gaming blogs. So if you just read for the main key highlight articles for about 1 month past, and some articles that I've carefully chosen for you. So I will share these links. That will be, basic reading on the industry. These are endless. You start going through one of these blogs, it's just endless, but we can look at it, or you can look at it leisurely later. It is not one of the priorities in your preparation process. You have a lot to do, even in your word count, your application skills, writing skills. There's a lot of practice you need. This is not a priority. Never use references just for the sake of referencing them. Never write irrelevant references. So that's the simple, straightforward guidance for you. You can pass without writing a single real life example easily. If you do everything else to the reasonable standard, up to a 60% standard, or rather in your case, 55% standard, you will pass. The second question I was asked was, how do you do a strategic evaluation? Evaluating a strategy. There are 2 approaches. If you get an evaluation of a strategic question, maybe the business is looking at a new strategy, like, entering a new market, buying a new company, merger, something, opening a new division, opening a new R&D project, or launching a new game, etc. So if it's a broad strategy, very top level strategy, you can go about it in 2 ways. One, benefits versus risk. So you can evaluate initially by looking at the benefits. What are the good things about this and what are the bad things? Then do not, if it's only evaluation, stop at that. You do not need to offer recommendations or say this is more positive than negative, etc. If they ask you to recommend, they might say evaluate and recommend. If there's an and recommend, then you must, it is an absolute necessity that you recommend whether to go ahead or not. If not, please do not spend time on that. Just evaluate, but make sure your evaluation is strong. If you have 4 positives and 4 negatives, 4 subheadings, 4 strong paragraphs, you explain the point, apply the point. Explain the point, apply the point. Then you do the same for negatives. That's one way. The other method is SAF framework: suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. So if you are someone who has a little, weak in knowledge in terms of SAF, I would definitely recommend you to recap. Go and recap SAF framework, especially what exactly are we testing here when we say suitability, acceptable to whom, suitable for what, and feasible. Feasibility is basically the financial feasibility for the most part. But practice both. in one of our exercises, what we do is we tend to practice both for the same task. When you do it a couple of times, you realize some tasks are more appropriate for SAF than positive versus negative approach, and some are more appropriate for benefit versus risk approach. So when you get the hang of it, and when you see a question, when you see the broad spectrum of the strategy, you have the ability to make your good judgment, saying, okay, this situation I'm going to use SAF, this situation I'm going to use benefits versus risk. Even if you look at past papers, you will realize there are some which has gone with the benefit versus risk approach, some SAF approach. So it's a matter of judgment. And that is not to say that every question only has one approach that is suitable. Both can be applied for any question. So it's a matter of judgment and it's a matter of perspective. How do you see this? So in the exam, choose whichever method that is easy and allows you to evaluate the strategy broadly. But these are the two options you have. More than everything, please make sure you practice both methods. Even in terms of just, basic answer plan, even if you don't take full 1 hour writing, just basic answer plans, because a lot of students are falling short in the application part. Talking about the point, illustrating the point, that is where you have to work. All right. The next question was on the news items. So how do we, the question was, how do we predict questions, exam questions based on the news items? Now, I think this is something that is being looked at this time because there is one news item where that the freak accident, there was an accident that had happened, and therefore you had connectivity had gone down and the cloud system had gone dark, right? So I think because of this, students have built up a certain notion that, oh, but trust me, every scenario or every pre-scene, we have something like that, an incident like that. And at the time of the moment you get the exam, it could be 3 months after the incident, 6 months after the incident, or the day after the incident. You never know. And out of the 4 to 5 variants that get tested, it may be that one variant is based on such a scenario. Overall, the news items are just a part of your pre-scene. They are not a question predictor. You have to be ready to face any of the variants you get, any situation that you get. So it's not necessary. This is where a lot of students are going wrong, where you think the SCS is about scenarios, but where you predict, oh, this could happen, oh, a video gamer could die, or cloud systems can go offline. You try to predict scenarios, but if one starts to predict scenarios, it's endless. I can tell you, I can give you 50 variants off the top of my head. You can never guess enough scenarios. Anything can happen. That is not the way. I know this, that sometimes there is a portrayal that the SCS is from a scenario perspective. No, it's from a skills perspective. You have to reverse engineer it. You have to come at it from the other way. Do you have the skills to face any scenario? That's the skill. So the first step is to remove yourself from that misconception that if you predict 20 scenarios, you can face this exam successfully. That is a waste of time. So you have to treat this as information, just like all the other information, because even from a single ratio or a single, a director leaving the company, an entire variant can be built. And it's nothing related. A point in the principal risk register, one risk register, or one risk mitigation element in your principal risk register, an entire variant, entire 3-hour paper can be built. So you have to treat the pre-scene as an open document that informs you about the things that are happening, the goings on, and the information about your company. A variant can be based on any part of the pre-scene. So study, understand, and analyze the information well. All the information. Don't try to rely too much on the news items or things like that. All the entire pre-scene is important. I'll give you a general advice before the exam. before the exam day. Let's say you're facing the exam on 25th, the day before the exam or until the exam, within the 24 hours up to the exam, the only document you should be reading, not mocks, not mock reviews, not analysis or any material, only the pre-scene. You should walk into the exam with all the practice, but only with the pre-scene in your mind. Okay. Then oh, right. So I was talking to you about strategic expectation. This is the thing. If you work in a company and if you go and ask the same question from your CEO and from an operational, junior level executive, are you going to get the same answer? Your CEO and a junior executive, you're not going to get the same answer. And the same exact thing applies to your answer writing in SAS. You have to write like a director writes, which means you have to write as someone. It's related to that example I told you about on revenue, synergies, where you can write minute synergies, or you can write broadly, start top down. Revenue synergies, one subheading, and under revenue synergies, you talk about everything that is possible. How revenue can be expanded, how customer groups can be capitalized, cross-selling can happen, blah, blah, blah. So you talk about all the little points under the broad point of revenue synergy. Then you talk about operational synergy, all economies of scale and scope and, employee productivity enhancements and getting rid of duplicate tasks, etc. All the little points will come under the broad point of operational synergy. It's one paragraph, one main point. So top down, not because when we see little synergies, small points that a line manager or a junior executive might write, that is a clear indicator that you're not ready to be considered as a strategic level or professional level candidate. So this is the difference. So you have to practice that as well. That is another place where getting mock feedback with an experienced source is or can be useful. Yeah, so those were the main questions I was asked, and I hope I've given clear guidelines to everything that came at me. As I mentioned, those reading links I will share with you, but I'm sure many of you had read. Oh, and there was another question on how to navigate the exam dashboard. So you might have been provided by CIMA on the link, but all you have to do is just go to, I will share the link as well with you here. If anyone has missed it or anyone hasn't been able to take a look at it, I'm sharing the link here. Just go to the question tutorials, click on take the exam tutorial here, and it will load. You basically can choose whether to go ahead with objective or case study. So you can simulate case study, click next. Basically, this is a tutorial where you can test the engine. You can familiarize yourself with the engine. I've shared the link with all of you. Now, those of you who've done the MCS, OCS, previous case studies, you're familiar with the Pearson VUE engine. For any of you who are come from FLP or CFO routes who have never done any CIMA exam, just use this link. It will be a good familiarization exercise. All right. Do I prefer planning on Scratchpad? Now, there are arguments, and I have seen situations where members have told me Scratchpad has been helpful. I usually don't advise for that. I usually say because your answer plan can be those subheadings, those sub points. So when you write your answer, you can expand on that. So if you can have the point, but if you want your points in the Scratchpad where you can move it around and you want to see the question, and with the Scratchpad on your screen, when you have the references window and your Scratchpad window, you can scribble something on the Scratchpad. If you see a productivity to that, you can test it in the tutorial. If you see a productivity to that, it's an option to take. And you have to also balance with your typing speed. So if you're someone who is really good with your typing speed, that's an option, another consideration that you can take. But if you're slow in your typing speed, and then yeah, again, you have to test it out. And also for any of you who have typing speeds less than 20 or 25 words per minute, please spend about half an hour a day for about 3-4 days doing some typing exercises. That's enough. This keyboard, it's a very easy thing to get used to. So if your typing speed is very slow, just spending a couple of hours to get that up will make a huge difference. So that is another tip I want to share. If questions are 60-40%, does that mean we have to respond 6? No, not necessarily. It doesn't mean that it's 10% is 1 point. There's absolutely nothing like that. I would say think about it in terms of your word count. So if you average, let's say you write 1,000 words per task, then 60-40 means it's an effort. That's why I use the word effort. So if you're someone who's writing 1,000 words on average, it means that you have to write 600 for 60% and 400 for 40%. Whereas there could be another person who is writing 700 words. That means 420 words around that number, 60%, 280 around that number. It's the proportion of your volume. And that's again, another way. It's a very simplified response to that question. But that is also definitely valid. So it's based on your time is divided and your effort is divided. And by effort, your planning effort and your writing effort. You're most welcome. And any other questions? Perfect. So if there are no other questions, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you so much for joining the session. I really hope that the session has been productive, helpful. I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I'm wishing you all the very best. Do your best in the exam. And I'm hoping to hear the good news or not, whether I hear it or not. I wish you all the best, and I'm hoping that you will pass the exam and clear CIMA and be a CIMA member in no time. Good luck. Yes, all praise is due to the Almighty, and may peace be upon you and all of your loved ones. Thank you so much. Good night.